Welcome back to another one of my CV2 tutorials. This tutorial, however, is a bit different from all the other ones I've done in the past and those who are yet to come. This tutorial is only made for anyone who has not gotten into CV2 because of any reason, such as it might seem complicated and they don't want to waste time and figure out that they cannot do it, which is false, let me tell you, right off the bat. For people who might be lost, or people who've only been doing things in beta and have lost all track of circuitry right now in the current version of CV2. This video will be mostly explanations, some examples, but mostly explanations from my end. I am going to be telling you all about how you can start with CV2, build up confidence, and get on your feet on your own, or with the help of my tutorials. That is your choice and your choice only, because I will be telling you a few methods that you can use to learn CV2 and pretty much improve in the future with your own help, instead of finding people for tutoring or classes. I'm not saying that those are not good options. No, the exact opposite. Classes and tutoring sessions are both very beneficial to you and your knowledge in general. The only difference is that in classes, you might be a bit limited to what you're doing compared to tutoring, for example, because tutoring is mostly one-on-one. You get to tell the tutor what you want, everything you want to learn, and the tutor then goes on your pace, not their own pace, but your pace, so you can learn everything, right? On classes, you obviously have more people at once, as you can see here. I've been filming all of my tutorials in my old classroom. This is where I used to have my own CV2 class, where I was teaching my students, who I've heard recently from. They are still using CV2. They're happy with the outcome, and I could not be happier as well, since that means I've been teaching them correctly. But okay, that out of the way, enough about me. Let's go with all about you. So, CV2. CV2 is on paper, CV2 is a rather complicated subject. People see it as something they will never have to learn, or never want to learn. Because, as I said earlier, it might seem complicated or too much to get into all at once. Now, the second one might be true. There's a lot of circuitries, there's a lot of logic behind it. You cannot get it in the span of 24 hours, unless you have experience with coding. Now, I'm going to start with people who have experience in coding. So in the video below, in the timeline, you will see that the video is structured with chapters. This first chapter, since we got the intro out of the way, will be only for people who have experience with coding. Now, I'm not talking about years of experience, not even months. I'm just talking about the people who have the right mindset for coding, who know how to think through and pretty much plan their code, and later on actually probably do it, or even partly. That is totally fine. And later, after this chapter, there will be a whole segment for all of you who do not know how to code, or have not gotten into it yet, and may or may not have not done anything in CV2, but want to, but are too scared, or just cannot be bothered in general. So, let's start. When we compare CV2 to coding, we see a lot of similarities. Now, that is because pretty much CV2 is all code. Now, that's not an Einstein idea or observation. We all know that Rec Room is obviously a game coded. Now, the most beneficial coding language for CV2 would be C#. Now, why C#? C# is the language Rec Room is built in, and that they share pretty much all the logic and functions. CV2 is just a more basic, simpler version of coding called visual coding. You can see these examples in both Unity, which is the engine Rec Room is built on, since Unity also has add-ons that you can visually code, so you don't need to write all those thousands of lines of code. You pretty much spawn in these visual representations of code and you connect them and configure them at your own pace and will. Now, I'm not saying that anyone who's been coding in any other language cannot do this. That is completely false. Coding logic remains coding logic, and that is shared between almost all coding languages, and it will benefit you very well. So let me tell you how you can even start if you're a coder but never done CV2. It's not hard for most of us that know how to code and have the right coding mindset and will to actually get into things. Just that the only difference is that some of us do want to do these things on our own and some require a bit of help to get you started, and then you can go on your way. The first thing, as I've said to literally every single person that started CV2, is get your variables correct. Get your variables in your head, all the colors, and that is pretty much very beneficial to anything you will do in CV2 in its entirety. Now, the reason why I say this is because those colors, those pins on all the variables, are present everywhere on every circuitry of any kind. It goes from logic, such as an if chip, to spawner gadgets. Everything on there you could kind of handle as a variable. Of course, that is false, that is not correct. Don't take literal wording that I say, but I'm giving you examples so I can give you a bit of motivation so you can get started. Now, for you coders, the best way to get into it is to actually go into an empty room. I'm not saying right now. When you have the time, go into an empty room, start spawning in circuits. Now, as said literally a minute ago, spawn in variables first. So, spawn in your integers, floats, booleans, colors, vectors, player variables, combatant, AI, all of those things, and analyze them first. See what they store, see how they work. Now, I don't need to explain to you what input and output means, because, that's present in every coding language. As soon as you have that figured out, you can use that knowledge and apply it to any other circuitry in the game. Now, of course, some might be a bit more complicated than the other, because some are still functions or things that you might have not heard of before. Now, for example, coding beginners might not know what a list is, or an array, but those are just the actual beginners in coding. But if you know what arrays are, you will not have problems with lists, for example. Now, let me share how I started with CV2, because I did this exact thing. I knew how to code, I've seen CV2, and that's exactly when it started coming out in beta. I started almost day one, and I got my mindset right, and I started wiring, started making prototypes. Now, I'm unable to show you many of them because my general workflow or work ethic is a bit all over the place, and I tend to remove everything I make. Now, do not make that mistake. I make this mistake even now. I'm trying to get better in that regarding that mindset. But what you should do is, as soon as you make things, even if they're the smallest things, save them. Save them as an invention. Spawn them in a few weeks later. Analyze them. See, okay, I did this, this, and this. Let me see if I can make this better. And keep upgrading those old things. You will keep making new inventions. You will keep learning things on your own. Now, you can obviously always look at CV2 tutorials such as mine, but mine are mostly oriented for beginners for now. As soon as we get all the beginner things out of the way, I will be having tutorials for actual inventions. So things like actual systems, not just me explaining to you what a circuit is, how it works, and how to deal with it. So yeah, the coders of you, all you gotta do is keep on working, keep on wiring, see what you can and can't do. Get a project in your mind, even if it's a simple PvP or parkour map, that will help you enormously on your CV2 journey. So let me show you one quick thing that I have actually saved, and then as it is also in my invention store if anyone wants it. It is a simple timer. There is nothing more than a simple timer, and That's its only function. So if I spawn this in right here and show you it, here you go. This is a simple timer that I made in, I don't know, a very short amount of time. I don't know. It's been a while since I made it. But as you can see, this is a custom circuit that I made with the help of circuit boards. And it's a simple timer. We input how many seconds each cycle of the timer is. We started. We can reset it. We have multiple outputs, so it'll tell us when 1 second is done, when the entire timer of what we set is done, and it shows us what the current seconds are of the timer. Now this is something that you could do as well. It is not complicated, it is not a lot of work, so for those of you who don't know what kind of thing to make, I advise you to maybe make a timer. Make a timer as your first project. You will not regret it, because you will know how circuits work together after that, and know how to make this exact same thing. That's also why these circuitries in my invention store are free, because it's simple and everyone can learn how to make them. Future me here. I'll stop this guy real quick. They're not on the circuit store. They're not on the invention store. What did I just tell you a few minutes ago about my work ethic? It's all gone. In reality, some of them broke because of circuit updates, because they were kind of old circuitries. And I never actually posted some of them. I don't know how that happens. But no, I'll put some up in the future. I promise. Okay, I'll let you get back to the video. Now mine is not editable because it is meant for general use in rooms. But for you, if you want to share the experience and share your knowledge with the world, as I will continue doing in the future, make inventions, publish them, have them for free, have them editable, so someone that might not know much about CV2 will spawn them in, edit them, and see like, oh wow, okay, that's how they did it. Okay, let me try it as well. So I hope I put a little bit more confidence in all of you coders who want to get started with CV2 but don't know how. If that was not enough, tell me in the comments or write me on my Discord or Discord server or Discord DMs. Maybe try and catch up to me in Rec Room. That is your choice. I'm always here to give you advice, to get you on your right mindset for CV2, so you can be one of the people, one of us, who deal with circuitries, who know what we're doing. No one is a master of this craft. There's always room for improvement. Remember that. If you see someone who's extremely good with circuits, do keep in mind they still have things to improve. They have still things to learn. No one will know everything all the time. So don't think of yourself as something small or something not of use, just because there's people who are better than you at the moment. Get your head in the game, get your mindset right, and with the right mindset, you can do all of this and maybe even, not maybe, probably, or even most definitely become better or as good as those people on the top. So keep that in mind, and let's move on to the next segment. The second segment, which is the last segment of this so-called tutorial, is for all of you who don't know how to code, who don't know how to do CV2, or never even used CV1. Now, none of this which I listed is something that you should be ashamed of. Not at all. CV2 is meant here for everyone. That's why it's easily accessible. No one needs special access for it. Now, for all of you, it might be a little bit similar to the coders that I just talked to. But in your case, it might be a bit slower and it might be a bit harder. You have to get the right so-called coder's mindset. Now, there is no such thing as a personality or mindset of a coder. Anyone can have that, anyone can do that. It's just a matter of practice and repetition, even. Now, I will start off the exact same for all of you as I did with the coders. All of you spawn in all the variables that you can find. Maybe not everything, because that's a bit too much, but spawn in an int variable, float variable, bool variable, color variable, string variable, and let's say a player or AI variable. Now take a look at those circuits, maybe even do it as I'm speaking. Pause the video, spawn them, and look at them right now. We can see there's a bunch of circuits there. Now we don't know what they do yet. So we have two options. The first one would be to figure it out on your own, which means take your make pen, put it on connect, and start hovering over the pins that you have. See what you will get when you hover over them. Now let's say, okay, I kind of know what these variables do. What do I do next? The next step is to actually use them. Not in a everyday use case, but for you. You have to figure out how circuits work, how you can use them, and how they're executed. So spawn in a button, as I have been doing in all my beginner tutorials on my YouTube channel, wire it up, and see what it does. Now in your case, you will figure out, okay, variables store values, good, which means I can use these later on. Now a very basic and a recommended example of this would be for your dorm room. In your dorm room, you can make a very simple and short circuitry which will pretty much just set your position somewhere in the dorm room. Now I have that on my own. I don't use welcome mats, for example, because sometimes those spawns might be a tiny bit unreliable. I am not sure if those have been fixed yet, but I chose the instant route of setting positions, for example. My dorm room is rather small. Half of the dorm room is limited and out of bounds, meaning that if you would spawn in regularly, you would spawn in outside of my actual dorm, in my dorm room instance, whatever you want to call it. So all I did is as soon as a player enters the room, their position is set into the center of my actual small area of my dorm room. And that goes for everyone who might touch a trigger volume outside of bounds of my actual dorm room. Those get set their position back in my dorm room and they're there again. So, you can do that. It is very simple. All you need, in my case, right, for this case that I've been saying, is the knowledge of events, which you can figure out on your own, or maybe see a tutorial, which I have. So you're free to leave this current video or watch it till the end. Go to one of my previous event tutorials and see how those work, and you can use that knowledge on your circuitry. Then you will need a set position chip, which means it'll set the position of something that you tell it to. Then you need a vector3 variable, which is a variable that stores position in a three-dimensional space, such as this. You also need a get position, so you store your variable. So you give a value to your variable, right? Because I had to store a certain position. So all I did is went in the middle of my dorm room. I saved my current position and then use it for everything else. And then the only thing else is a trigger volume and a local player chip, which we will check that if the person that just touched my trigger volume outside of bounds is the same as the local player, means that they'll be teleported back. And that's it. There's not a lot of science behind it. There really isn't. It just takes a lot of practice. So this is kind of how you coders and how you people who don't code could get into CV2. Now I know this is not a very, very useful video for most of you, because I'm just blabbering on. I'm not showing you examples such as in my previous tutorials, but more of those to come. Basically what I'm trying to do in this video is get your mindset correct, get you some motivation, just get you started on your CV2 journey. And that's all most players need. And you can 100% figure out how circuits work on your own. That's what I did. I spawned things in, I looked at them, wired some things together and said, oh yeah, okay, makes sense. Makes sense how that works. Okay, cool. And I learned everything I currently know on my own. And I will continue to do so. I do not need tutorials anymore, because now I can figure out things on my own and imagine how circuitries would go. That's how I do it. And now for the last section of the tutorial, so-called tutorial, let's say, is basically how do you even plan circuitries? Now that's a bit more complicated question because everyone has their own way of thinking about things. I think of it on a very technical level. I get on to imagining circuitries right off the bat. Let's say I just want, for example, the thing I was just telling you about in my dorm room. How would I do that? That's the first question I would ask myself. I would ask myself that and then think, what chips would I need? What would I do to minimize the use of circuits in my room so it would not take off net or too many circuits of the few thousand that we have limited currently? Then I just spawn things in. So I think about it first. Then the next step would be imagining the circuits I need. And the third would be just getting into it, trial and error. That is a very important thing to keep in mind. Circuitries are not things that you can just do in a split second. You still have to put in thought, especially the people who make giant maps who work all with CV2. They have to put in thought. They don't just do something and expect it to work. They think about it, they spawn things in, trial and error, boom, it works. And that's pretty much it. That's about it. I hope that some of this that I've said today might stay in your head, might get you on your CV2 journey. If it does, let me know. I want to hear the people who might think that this video is useful to them, that got them into the correct space and mindset for CV2. And that's about it. That wraps it up for today. I hope the video wasn't too long, but I try to keep it kind of simple, hopefully, for all of you. I hope you enjoyed the video. As said, if you did, make sure to leave a comment and subscribe. It will help me out a lot. It will give me more motivation to make more videos for all of you. Maybe even open my old class in the future. Who knows? If you have any questions or any feedback you want to give me, feel free to do so in the comments, in the Discord, on Rec Room, as you wish. This current room right here that I'm standing in is still available to the public. You can go in here, you can leave a feedback comment on here if you wish. It will help me out a lot. I'm gonna read it. I'm gonna read all of them. Most of the time, I read everything I see. At least I try to. But yeah, I hope I'll see you in the next video. And yeah, see you. That's all.